Okay, let's jump right in. We're doing a deep dive today on a really significant market-shaping event in the oncology space.
We are, specifically in non-small cell lung cancer, or NSCLC for short.
And this isn't just another drug approval. We're talking about a new oral therapy, Zongertinib, that looks like it's completely resetting the benchmark for a very tough-to-treat mutation.
It really is. What's so compelling here is how this one drug seems to solve several major problems at once. We're looking at the FDA's accelerated approval for Zongertinib, which will be marketed as Hernexeos.
And it's the first of its kind, right? An oral targeted therapy for this group.
The very first is for adults with previously treated NSCLC that has a specific HER2, that's ERBB2 tyrosine kinase domain activated mutation. I mean, this is the definition of precision medicine.
And the approval came through pretty fast, August 8, 2025, from Boehringer Ingelheim. So this really sets the stage for a major battle in that second-line treatment setting.
A huge battle. The indication is very precise, It's for patients with unresectable or metastatic non-squamous NSCLC with those HER2 mutations who've already had prior systemic therapy.
So it's aimed squarely at the population with the biggest unmet need.
Exactly.
Okay, let's get to the numbers that made this happen. The data is from the BEAMIAN LNG1 phase IB trial. There's one number here that, if you're watching this space, just jumps right off the page.
It absolutely does. You're talking about the objective response rate, the ORR.
Tell us what it was.
It came in at 75%. 75%.
Wow. Let's just pause on that. In a second-line setting for a cancer this aggressive, a 75% response rate is that. That's incredible.
It's not just incredible, it's potentially practice-changing. To see 3 out of every 4 patients responding is just, well, it immediately sets a new standard of care.
And what does that 75% actually break down into? Is it just shrinking tumors a little bit?
No, these are deep responses. 6% of patients had a complete response, which means the cancer was, completely undetectable.
And the rest?
Another 69% had a partial response. So you're seeing potent, rapid activity.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. Why has this specific HER2 mutation in lung cancer been so difficult to treat for so long? I know it's pretty rare.
It is rare, only about 2 to 4% of NSCLC cases. But it comes with a really poor prognosis. The difficulty is molecular. We're often dealing with something called exon 20 insertion mutations.
And why are those insertions so tricky?
Well, historically, those exon 20 insertions create a sort of awkward shape in the receptor's binding pocket. It makes it very difficult for older, less specific inhibitors to actually latch on.
So they were basically resistant from the start.
Exactly. You need a drug that's designed with incredible precision to overcome that specific structural block. Zongertinib does that.
The drug is described as a HER2 selective TKI that binds covalently. Break that down for us. Why is the word covalent so important here?
Okay, so think of most drugs as a key that fits in a lock. It turns the lock, does its job, and then comes out. Covalent binding is like putting superglue on that key. Once it's in the lock, it forms a permanent, irreversible bond. It's not coming out.
And for the patient, that means?
It means much more durable, sustained suppression of that cancer signal. This usually translates directly to a longer duration of response. The effect just lasts.
And that durability is critical, especially when you think about where this cancer goes. The sources say nearly half of these patients have brain metastases when they're diagnosed.
That is the other massive challenge. You can have a great drug, but if you can't cross the blood-brain barrier, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back.
So does Zongertinib get into the brain?
The early signs are very promising. Now, the patient numbers are small, only 5 people in the trial with measurable CNS disease at the start, but responses were seen in 3 of those 5. That's a strong signal that this TKI has the CNS penetration you need to really make a difference for these patients.
That is a huge differentiator. Okay, let's talk testing. The NCCN guidelines say you need to test for 2 different things: HER2 overexpression and the HER2 mutation. Why both? Aren't they the same thing?
Great question. No, they're completely different. A mutation, which is what Zongertinib targets, is a fundamental change in the protein's code. It's like the lock itself is misshapen.
Okay.
Overexpression just means the cell is making way too many copies of a normal receptor, too many normal locks.
So they're distinct targets that need different drugs.
Precisely. They don't always overlap. So you need comprehensive testing NGS for the mutation and IHC for overexpression to make sure you're putting the patient on the right path.
Speaking of paths, this brings us to the regulatory risk. This was an accelerated approval, which is great for getting the drug to patients quickly, but it comes with a big string attached, doesn't it?
It does. The FDA grants this based on a surrogate endpoint, in this case the amazing ORR, that is reasonably likely to predict a real clinical benefit.
The key words being reasonably likely.
Exactly. The approval is conditional. It's contingent on proving that benefit in a big confirmatory trial.
And what's the status of that trial?
Boehringer is running it now. It's called BEAMIAN-LUNG2. It's a multi-center randomized study, and everyone in the space should circle their calendars for late 2029.
2029. So there's a few years of risk here. If that trial fails, the drug could theoretically be pulled.
That's the risk baked into every accelerated approval. The final report is due in November 2029.
All right, let's shift to the business side and the competitive landscape. The efficacy is obviously top tier. A median duration of response of over 14 months is fantastic. But what really changes the market is the safety profile.
This is where Zongertinib lands a body blow on the old standard of care. There are some side effects to watch for sure. Hepatotoxicity, liver issues were seen in about 27% of patients.
Which requires monitoring, I assume.
Yep, liver function tests every 2 weeks for the first 3 months, then monthly. And there's a small risk of left ventricular dysfunction, about 6%. But these are known, manageable TKI class effects.
But the real story, the competitive story, is about the lungs. It's about ILD.
Absolutely. Interstitial lung disease, or pneumonitis. This was the Achilles heel of the infused antibody-drug conjugate, or ADC, that was used before.
What were the rates with Zongertinib?
Just 1.2%. And only one fatality in the trial. Now, compare that to trastuzumab deruxtecan, where you can see ILD rates as high as 15%.
15. So that's more than a 10-fold difference in a really scary, potentially fatal side effect.
A massive difference. And that, combined with the convenience of taking a pill at home versus going to an infusion clinic, it's a game changer.
Which is why the NCCN guidelines were updated so quickly. How has this shifted the treatment sequence?
Well, before this, the ADC was the go-to second-line therapy. Now, the consensus is shifting very, very quickly. Experts are saying you start with the oral TKI, Zongertinib.
And you save the ADC for later.
You reserve it for a later line of therapy. The thinking is simple. Why expose a patient to that high risk of ILD and chemo-like side effects if you have a highly effective, much safer oral option?
It seems like a total market displacement. But one question remains. Does Zongertinib work after a patient has already been on an ADC?
It does, and this is key. The trial looked at that exact scenario. In patients who had already failed a prior HER2 targeted ADC, Zongertinib still produced a confirmed ORR 44%.
So it works both as the preferred initial choice and in the salvage setting.
That's right. It has broad utility across the treatment journey.
All right, that brings us to our thought exercise segment. Just to be clear, this is not financial advice. This is purely an analytical exercise.
The facts are laid out. We have a drug with a huge ORR, oral convenience, a massive safety advantage, but it's all riding on that confirmatory trial readout in 2029.
So pitch us the trade idea. How would someone play this 5-year regulatory window?
Okay, so the core idea is a pair trade. It's a bet on that eventual market shift. The strategy would be to short the companies that are heavily invested in the incumbent ADC.
So AstraZeneca and Daiichi Sankyo.
Exactly. While at the same time, you'd take a smaller, hedged long position in a proxy for Boehringer Ingelheim's private pipeline success. A derivative, maybe.
And what's the rationale that makes this so compelling, even if it's outrageous?
It's the simple, powerful combination of safety and convenience. If BEAMIAN-LUNG2 confirms this efficacy in 2029, the standard of care will flip permanently.
You think it's that certain?
I mean, doctors and patients will almost always prefer the oral pill with a 10-fold lower risk of a fatal lung toxicity. It's just human nature. That event would crush the market share of the infused ADC in that valuable second-line setting.
So the trade is really a long-term bet that safety and convenience win the war for sequencing, and it all comes to a head in 2029.
That's the entire thesis. It's a multi-year bet on that 2029 data readout, completely redrawing the map.
Okay, bringing us back from the trading desk. To sum it all up, the approval of Zongertinib is a massive step forward. First, oral targeted therapy for this group, a 75% ORR, and a really differentiated safety profile.
It's a fantastic example of the accelerated approval pathway doing what it's supposed to do. For doctors, the immediate takeaway is the need for comprehensive biomarker testing. You have to find these patients, but for everyone, the key is to watch for that confirmatory data from BEAMIAN-LUNG2 in 2029.
And we'll leave you with a final provocative thought. We now have a potent, well-tolerated oral drug that clearly works against brain metastases. So how might this change the role of more localized treatments, like radiation therapy, for brain mets in this specific group of patients moving forward?
And as a final reminder, this conversation is for informational and educational purposes only. It does not constitute any kind of financial, investment, or medical advice. Always consult with your own professional advisors before making any decisions.